Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to another episode of Love and Abuse, and as a reminder, all information on love and abuse is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being. And I'm so glad I say that at the beginning of every episode, because it's bound to happen that someone is not going to like what I talk about on the air. Someone's going to send me hate mail or give me a critical review of what I talk about. And it doesn't happen often. I think it's only happened maybe once or twice in the years I've been doing this. Well, at least on my other show, The Overwhelmed Brain. And this show I started in February of 2019. And so every now and then, someone won't like something I say. And what's interesting about love and abuse is that, a lot of people that are experiencing toxic relationships will listen to this show and learn something from it, and then take what they learned into their relationship, or go one step further and leave their relationship, or communicate with their partner or the person being toxic in a way that's more productive than destructive. And what I mean by that is, let's just say that you're the victim of emotional abuse or some sort of toxic relationship, and you normally find yourself being defensive when the toxic person is trying to put you down or make you feel bad about yourself. And that technique probably doesn't work for you, because a toxic person will put you on the defense and want you to stay there so they stay in power. And as long as you're on the defense, they stay in power. They get to call the shots, and they get to do whatever they want to do and continue doing what they want to do, because you're too busy defending yourself and wondering what you did wrong. And so you might listen to a show like this or some other resource material and learn a different strategy. The different strategy might be, don't automatically go into defensive mode. How about instead of that, just get back on track? Like, for example, you might have someone that says, "You're too sensitive." I've heard that many times. "You're always so sensitive. I can't say anything around you because you're always just so sensitive." And so when somebody says that to you, you might go into a state of inflection and start wondering if they're right. Well, am I too sensitive? Or maybe I'm just taking it the wrong way. Or maybe I need to reflect a little bit and figure out where exactly I'm too sensitive, and maybe I need to learn, something new. Maybe I need to toughen up. Maybe I need to figure out what my triggers are. And, that could be true. You might need to figure out what some triggers are. But at the same time, someone who says you're too sensitive knows you're sensitive, yet they are still being harmful. They're still trying to hurt you. They're still being aggressive. Someone who loves you isn't going to be aggressive toward you. They're not going to put you down for being sensitive, because they love you and they know you're sensitive, so they won't take advantage of that. So a show like this will come along and give you tools to respond to someone who, for example, says something like you're too sensitive. And if you need to learn those tools, you can actually listen to an episode I called The You're Too Sensitive Game at loveandabuse.com. So check that out if you're looking for that. But I'm talking about the people that listen to the show. There's going to be people looking for tools, people looking for resources, people looking for a way to stop feeling so bad in their relationships. That, along with the other side, the other people that listen to this show, which are the ones doing the toxic communication, which are the ones being toxic. And those people I also talk to. I also talk to the people that are the abuser or the controller or the manipulator, because I want healing for everyone. I want healing for everyone that comes along and hears this show. And if your life is going great and your relationships are going great and you're not experiencing the stuff I talk about in the show, then you probably don't need this show. But if your relationships aren't going great, this is probably why you're listening to a show like this, is that you need tools. You want to know maybe perhaps what you're doing wrong or doing that isn't helpful in the relationship and maybe even hurtful. And so, like I said, I started talking about how every now and then someone's going to get ticked off about what I say on the air. And I like to have full transparency and always read those messages I get on the air because I think it's fair that you have all the information at your disposal, that you can do what you want to do with that information, and you can make your decision based on that information, so that I'm not the judge and jury of myself. So with that said, I'm going to read you a message that I received through Facebook, and I'm also going to break the elements of the communication down so that you understand what can be toxic in someone's communication. So this is really twofold, actually. I'm going to read you the message I received, which was hurtful and meant to hurt me. And it was hurtful when I read it, because it's hard to do something for years and years and years and trying to help people, both people, trying to help everyone. I'm not just trying to get victims out of emotionally abusive situations. I'm trying to help the people being abusive so they stop being abusive. And I want you to have a great life. I want you to have great relationships. I've been there. I've been emotionally abusive. And I know how much it weighs on you when you're in that state of mind. You're always emotionally triggered. You're always wanting to make your partner feel bad and guilt them into changing their ways. And it's a terrible, crappy place to be on that side too. I mean, when you actually are a kind person underneath, when you have empathy, when you have caring and compassion, if that's underneath, yet you find yourself wanting to control your partner and wanting them to feel bad and trying to guilt them into submitting to conforming, and you also know that perhaps your relationship isn't turning out the way you want it to turn out, then maybe it's time to look at yourself and figure out what you can do differently that maybe will give you better results. Because if the results you're getting now aren't working, then something has to change. And sometimes that involves going inward and telling yourself, well, maybe it's something I'm doing. Maybe I do need to look at myself and figure out what I can change that can make my relationships better, make me a better person, or at least heal from what I'm holding on to, any anger or hurt I'm holding on to from the past. Maybe there's something I can do to change that. So I'm telling you all this because I want to let you know that if you're listening as the victim of abusive behavior, I want you to heal. I want you to be able to communicate effectively with the people in your life and not be in that state of victim mode anymore. I want to help empower you so that you can make the right decisions. And that doesn't always mean you have to separate. That doesn't always mean you stop communicating with the person. Sometimes it means you communicate in a different way, because some relationships can heal. Some relationships can get better. So, I don't promote divorce. I don't promote separating from someone so you never talk to them again. I always try to promote the healing of any relationship first. And if that can't be done, then you might have to take the next step of separating because someone isn't cooperating or doesn't get it or doesn't want to change or work on the relationship because they are so stuck in their ways, and that can happen too. So I'm talking to, the victims, and I'm also talking to the perpetrators, the abusers, the manipulators, the controllers. And I don't mean to label you as that. I'm just using that for brevity. I'm just using that to say, there are people that do this behavior. You might be one of those people that does this behavior. And you know what? If you're listening to the show, you probably don't want to do that behavior anymore. Or you're like the person who wrote to me, which I'm going to read right now and we'll go over it. This person wrote, what did he write? And I'm going to read it word for word. You are not a qualified professional. He says, all your advice are based on your own experience. Every case is different. Your ego is too big, constantly reminding you how good you are and how bad you were. No need for the pity card. Because you couldn't change and save your relations, you expect that to be the case for everyone. You are wrong again. You are not a professional, and you should leave this to those that are. You have a nice voice. Please find another business, as you are hurting more than helping. Sad to see so many people trying to help and making a business of it, but in fact they don't help and are a danger for others. Share your experience if you like, but please don't tell people what to do. You are not qualified, and you measure everything through you. Please stop doing damage. There it is. There's the message I got. And the first thing I always say to anyone who writes to me and doesn't like me is thank you. Seriously, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for expressing it, because there is either hurt or anger or something inside this person that needs to come out. And it comes out in words that can be hurtful to someone. And, when I read this, of course, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to read this. It's like, oh no, I've been doing this for free for like 7 years, just trying to help people, trying to give them new tools. And somebody comes along and says this, it is hurtful. So if that was the goal, you succeeded. At the same time, I appreciate you sharing this. I really do. I'm not being condescending, because I would rather have you share this than hold it in and take it out on someone else or be hurtful to someone else. I would rather have you share that with me, because I've done a lot of healing. I've done a lot of personal growth. I've done a lot of reflection. I have been depressed. I have been anxious. I've been through all that, and I've been through the healing. And I'm not trying to boast or brag. I'm just telling you, I've been through a lot. So when I receive a message like this, it doesn't affect me like it used to. It doesn't come at me and ruin my entire day. I still feel it though. I still feel the intention behind the message, which I would like to break down and talk about. Again, I'm fully transparent on the show. If you really have something to say to me, if you are hurt by something that I said, I want to hear about it. I want to talk about it. I want to get it out in the open. Let's put it on the table. Let's just discuss this. I want to be open with you. The person wrote, you are not a qualified professional. When somebody says that to you, they're trying to tarnish your reputation. They're trying to make you think about your own qualifications, and perhaps you should feel like an imposter because you're coming on the air, acting as the authority, and you're telling people what to do. I mean, that's what I'm getting from this. I may be wrong. I mean, he may have another thought in his head, and I don't want to take that away from him. But the way I read this, since I received this message, this is my interpretation. The way I read this is that he wants me to go inward and question my own credentials and my qualifications. And he also doesn't say what qualifies me. Does a PhD qualify me to talk about toxic relationships? Maybe. Maybe that's what he's looking for. I don't have a PhD. I've said that on the air before. In fact, I've been honest about all my qualifications on the air before. But what I get from this is that he's trying to, again, put me on the defense, trying to make me feel as if I'm not qualified to talk about this. And you know what I say to that? Hey, you may be right. You might be. You might be 100% right. I might not be qualified to talk about this. Yet I'm going to come on the air and tell you my experience and tell you what works for me, tell you what works for my client. But for this person, maybe I'm not qualified. Maybe there are things that I talk about that I don't have all the information for, that I don't have enough expertise in. I'm perfectly willing to accept that. Yet I get hundreds of testimonials saying all the time how much I've helped people. So I really have to just go by feedback. I mean, of course, I got certified as a coach many years ago. I've done many, many years of study. I've been through training. I've received other certifications, but I'm not a PhD. And to tell you the truth, I actually wanted to become a therapist about 10 years ago. And I looked into it and I decided not to. Maybe that makes me a loser. I don't know. But when I decided not to, I realized that having a PhD actually limits my ability to speak about some of the stuff I talk about on the air, because there are actually licensing requirements in different areas. I've tried to have PhD therapists on my show before, many years ago when I took guests, and some of them wouldn't come on. Some of them said they couldn't talk about what they talk about because they need to be in a closed environment with a paid client. And so that's why I start every episode with, please seek a professional for any medical or psychological advice, because that's not what you'll get here. You'll just get my opinions, my experience. I've been doing this for years. I get a lot of good feedback. And quite frankly, I want you to be discerning. I want you to hear someone like me and ask yourself, is this guy legit? Should I listen to this person? I want you to do that. This person who wrote, I want you to do that. Absolutely. If I'm not good for you, then stop listening to me. Absolutely. So there's that first line. You're not a qualified professional. Not sure what he's saying that qualifies me. Maybe he wants me to be a therapist, but I'm not, and I don't claim to be, and I'm pretty proud of my accomplishments over the years. The second thing he says, all your advice are based on your own experience. So I think what he's saying is all your advice is based on your own experience. Every case is different. I don't disagree. I think that's 100% accurate. Your ego is too big, constantly reminding you how good you are and how bad you were. I don't know. You may be right. I don't know what to say about that. If my ego is too big, here I am reading it to you. You decide if that's true. If you believe my ego is too big and that bothers you, then I would certainly stop listening. I don't think my ego is too big, but maybe that's my ego talking. But I give you the freedom to say that, to tell that to me. And if you feel like I'm just swimming in my ego over here, then maybe I'm not the right person for you. I don't see it the same way, but I certainly welcome your opinion on that. And he says, constantly reminding you of how good you are and how bad you were. Oh my God, I don't think I have ever said how good I am. I think, in fact, I say I have a lot to learn. In fact, when I was talking about judgments on my judgment episode, I've done a lot of healing around judging other people. But I also know that those judgments still sneak up on me. They do. I am not perfect. And when these emotional triggers come up and I feel like judging someone or putting someone down or feeling superior, I have to check in. So yeah, perhaps, my ego is still playing a role in there. And I absolutely believe that you should check in with yourself when you have these emotional triggers come up and tell yourself, hey, you need to look at this. You need to reflect on that. And so by telling me, constantly reminding how good you are and how bad you were. I mean, I did do bad behavior. I was emotionally abusive in the past. I don't know if I need to remind myself or you of that, but I say it just in case you've never heard the story before, or you're a new listener and you don't know what this guy's all about. So maybe you just need to hear this stuff. But I don't think it's to fill my ego. And then he said, no need for the pity card. I don't know what to say about that. I'm not looking for pity. I'm just out here helping. I'm just out here providing information, and if you benefit from that information, great. But I don't think I'm looking for pity. The next thing he said is, because you couldn't change and save your relations, I think he means relationships, you expect that to be the case for everyone. You are wrong again. Well, I don't expect anything. I just hope that somebody learns something and takes it into their life, and they have a great tool that they can use, and they get better and they feel better and they're happier. So I don't expect that to be the case for everyone. In fact, some people are going to be able to save their relationships. Some people are going to leave their relationships. And I didn't think I was right about that. So that statement just doesn't make any sense to me. But again, thank you for expressing it. The next one is, you are not a professional and you should leave this to those that are. Again, I'm not sure what he's qualifying as a professional. If it's a PhD, then absolutely tune into a podcast by a PhD or seek a professional, like I say at the beginning of every episode. I don't hide that. So absolutely find the right person for you. The next one, you have a nice voice. Thank you. Please find another business as you are hurting more than helping. I don't know what to say about that. I get hundreds of testimonials. I get hundreds of people writing me letters saying how much the show has helped. You can go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and actually click on About and then Testimonials. Every time I get one, I throw it on there. And of course, you might say, well, they're all positive. Of course, you're only going to post the positive ones. Well, the negative ones, I read on the air. So this is what I'm doing now. So this just sounds like he's trying to make me feel bad about myself. He's trying to put me on the defense. He's trying to make me feel guilty. I'm not sure. But he goes on, sad to see so many people are trying to help and make a business of it, but in fact, they don't help and are a danger for others. I agree. I mean, there are people trying to make a business of talking about mental health and well-being and talking about toxic relationships. They are trying to make a business of it. And some are very helpful and some aren't. And yes, some can be a danger for others. If somebody's out there saying, if you're depressed, you should drink a lot, that might be dangerous advice. So yes, I agree. It is sad to see so many people trying to help and make a business of it when they might, in fact, be dangerous. So I think he's implying that that's you, Paul. That's you. You're doing this. And all I can say is I disagree. And I respect you having an opinion on it. And then he says, share your experiences if you like, but please don't tell people what to do. I don't think I do tell people what to do. I think I give them suggestions and I give them my experience and what might work. But I don't think I come out and say, you should do this. Well, maybe I do. Maybe I do every now and then say, you should do this. So he might be right there as far as telling people what to do. He wants me to share my experience, but don't tell people what to do. Again, I respect your opinion on that, but I have a feeling it's coming from a place inside of you that may not be necessarily happy with anything I do. I'm not sure where this comes from. The only thing I could think of is that maybe you do behaviors that I talk about and you don't like that, you don't want to change, or you're offended. And if I've offended you, I apologize. I definitely don't mean to offend anyone on the show. I am really here to help everyone that listens, no matter what side of the abuse spectrum you're on, if you're the victim, if you're the abuser. Again, just terms for brevity. But I really do want you to heal. I really want you to be happy. I want you to feel better. And his last comment is, you are not qualified, again, trying to make me reflect on my credentials, and you measure everything through you. Yeah, there might be some truth there. There's a lot of stuff that I talk about that I measure through me from my own experiences. But I've worked with a lot of clients for many years. So it's not only through me, it's through all the people I've talked to and what they've gone through as well. So that sentence isn't 100% accurate. And then his last comment is, please stop doing damage. Okay, I won't do any damage, I promise. And I don't think I am, but this is your opinion, and thank you again for sharing this. And why am I dedicating a show to this? You might think, oh, his ego is now dedicating an entire show to this, to this message. Well, two things. One, I was hurt when I read this. I'll be really transparent about this. I was really hurt. And it sits in you when you're hurt. You can feel it. You sit with it and you're like, what do I do? What do I say? I wasn't so much in that space, like, what do I do? What do I say? I knew as soon as I received this, I had to read it on the air. Not to oust him or anything like that. It wasn't that at all. I really do want to be transparent about this. I really do want to address this because there are people out there that will feel this way. And my guess is that he probably doesn't like what I'm saying because it probably affects him in a negative way. And because of that, there might be things that he's dealing with, and forgive me for saying this for the person who wrote this, there might be things that you're dealing with that you don't want to face inside of you. There might be a way that you are that you don't want to change, and therefore get upset when I talk about the things that may need healing. And when you have something inside of you that may need healing and you feel pretty darn good about yourself, then all I ask you is, are your relationships turning out for the best? Are you getting the results that you want in your relationships? Because if you are, then you're right about everything that you said here, because it's ticking you off and you're doing your own thing and you're getting the results that you want. And I apologize to you. And you definitely don't want to listen to this show anymore because it does sound like I might be harmful to you. But if you're not getting the results you want in your relationships, all I ask is that you do reflect on your own behaviors, on your own willingness to look at your results and tell yourself, maybe I'm the common denominator for all these results. Maybe I do need to look at something. And that's a very, very hard place to go. When I was doing it, this is my own experience again. When I was doing it, it was so hard to admit that I could be doing anything wrong because they should change. They should conform to me. They should be doing what I want them to do. I wanted to change the people I was with. If she would only listen to me, we would be happy. That was my MO. If my wife would only listen to me, we would both be happy. But she kept feeling that judgment. She kept feeling that pressure for her to change into something that I wanted her to be. And I just read this the other day in a post given to me by my client, something about the dream woman. Like she was talking about a heterosexual man having this dream woman in mind. When they first get together, this is the dream woman. And anything outside that perfect view of a woman would crash their reality and cause them to want to control and manipulate the other person to conform to their dream woman. I've seen this a lot. I've seen this in my own life. I married my dream woman, and when I found out other things about her that I didn't like, I tried to shape her back into my dream woman. I wanted her to be this perfect person that complied with my vision of what a perfect wife would be. And of course, that's going to be pressure, and that's going to be abusive, because when you're trying to change someone else, trying to make them conform, trying to control them, and they can't be themselves, then they don't feel loved, they don't feel supported, and they're going to want to get away from you, or they're going to get depressed, like my wife did. She kept getting more and more depressed with me because of the way I was showing up. So when you're in a relationship and you're getting these results where you think you're 100% right and your partner needs to change, that's what caused the end of my relationship. But as this person suggests, I'm not looking for pity on that. I've done my healing on that. I don't need anyone to write to me and say, you poor thing. I'm not looking for that at all. In fact, I've had somebody write to me and say, you were a jerk to your wife. It's true. It is true. I'm only laughing now because I healed, and we have a better relationship now than when we were married. I don't really talk to her anymore, but I know she's in a great relationship now. She's happy. That's all I want for her. I mean, since I've healed, I've wanted nothing for her except to be happy. That's the goal, I think, with any relationship. I just want my partner to be happy, or I just want my ex to be happy. Imagine if you could say that. I just want my ex to be happy. If she's happy or he's happy, then I'm happy, because I love them so much that I would rather have them be happy without me than be unhappy with me. That is a very brave, bold thing to say. And when you can come to that place inside yourself, I think that's really loving someone in a healthy way. I think that's a great way to look at it. So I love seeing my ex-wife in another relationship, happy as anything, as far as I know. And I believe she's in a much better place than she was with me. And I think that's a great thing that we should want for everyone in our life. How can we help them be in a better place, whether it's with us or not? That gives the freedom of loving someone so much that you're willing to support them even when they don't want to be with you. That's so tough. That's a crushing feeling, someone not wanting to be with us. I totally get that. I've experienced that many times in my life. And when it's happened in the past, I've not been able to handle it well. I only started handling it well when I realized that I was responsible. I am the common denominator of these problems, and I need to look inward instead of trying to focus on someone else, trying to change them, trying to put them down, trying to make them feel guilty, on, and all these behaviors I'm not proud of, but it happened. And like this person wrote and said, it's all about your experiences. You can share your experiences, but don't tell other people what to do. Absolutely. Don't listen to me. Only do what you should do for you. Every situation is different. I agree with this person. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but again, he's entitled to his opinion. And I appreciate that he wrote it, and I hope that he's having the time of his life and he's happy and that everything works out well for him. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I honestly mean that, because the more happy people are in the world, the happier my world gets. So there's a little bit of egoistic selfishness in there. I want people to be happy so that I'll be happy. Yes, that's in there. It does help when I'm around people that are already happy, that are more fulfilled, that are taking steps that empower them so that I get uplifted around them. They get uplifted around me because I'm in a good space and I'm working on myself all the time. No one's perfect. Everyone has something to work on. And when you don't believe you have anything to work on, that's when you should probably look inward. That's when you should probably reflect. And this works for anyone listening. If you're the victim of a toxic relationship and you point your finger at the abusive person and you say, it's all them. It's all them. If they would change, then I would be happier. That's the same attitude that the person who does the abusive behavior has too. They look at you and they point their finger. If you would only change, we would be happier. So it's interesting how the abusive person and the victim have the same root thoughts. They need to change. They need to do this. Except one person goes at it by controlling and manipulating, and the other person goes at it by trying harder to be nice and trying harder to be kind and more compassionate and just trying to change. So the dichotomy exists where one person starts to dominate and become more aggressive. The other person gets more and more submissive sometimes, or more and more drained as they're trying to comply and trying to do the right thing for the other person. So when you're in a relationship and you see this dichotomy, you can tell the person who's really trying, changing and asking what else they can do to change and what can they do to please you? What else can they do to show up in a way that you want them to show up? You can almost always tell the difference between the victim and the abuser. And the abuser is like, why won't she do this, or he? Why won't they do this? Why won't they comply? If they would only just do what I asked, if they would only do this. It doesn't sound like an equal relationship. It sounds like an authoritarian relationship where there has to be a dominant and a submissive. And if the submissive doesn't comply and the dominant isn't really caring about having a conversation about what can be done to improve the relationship, all they care about is compliance and submission and making sure that the other person does what they're supposed to do to make them happy. And that could be the dream woman, the dream man scenario, where that person's not being the person I want them to be. That person's being independent and thinking for themselves. I don't want that. I want them to think like this. And when you have a loving relationship that turns into this, it's very hard to change the dynamic until the abusive person finally stops being controlling and manipulative and looks inward and says, maybe I'm being a little too hard. Maybe I'm being too judgmental. Maybe I'm just not being empathetic. I mean, what if that were me on the other side of this? What if I were being told to do this? What if I were being controlled? What if I were given that glare when I did something that they don't like? The empathy, when that disappears from the relationship, or it never existed, makes the relationship go south really fast. When you don't have someone that actually cares and can't put themselves in your shoes, so they just continue mistreating you or disrespecting you, then it's time to have a real conversation, a hard conversation maybe. Because if they don't care, it's going to be hard to have a conversation with someone who doesn't care. And so I'm going to wrap up this episode saying in conclusion that the type of communication that you have with each other, with the person in your life or your family or a friend, is so important. Words can hurt or they can heal. Words can make someone feel bad and guilty and ashamed, or they can make someone feel on top of the world. I mean, there's a big difference between someone saying, you know what, when you do that behavior, it makes me feel bad. Could you please stop doing that? That is something that I would hope that my girlfriend would say to me if I was doing anything wrong or anything hurtful. Hey, when you do that, it makes me feel bad. Would you please stop doing that? I would be like, oh my God, I never want you to feel bad. Of course, I will stop doing that. I didn't know that was a problem. Or if I did and I was just being a jerk, then I needed to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's a big difference between that and saying, you need to shape up. You need to do this behavior or that behavior. And if you don't do it, you're a bad person. There's a big difference there. And I'm not saying either one of these is 100% right. There are times when you might have to stand up and say, you need to stop doing that right now. I mean, the victims of emotional abuse typically don't stand up and say that. The victims are usually the ones that don't say enough of that, and they just keep taking abuse. Whereas the aggressive person, the person who is being controlling and abusive, they are the ones that are going to say things like that. And if the roles were reversed, if they started actually talking the way the other person talked, if they both did it, it might lead somewhere. I'm not giving that as a suggestion, but it is something to keep in mind. It's interesting how you can have one way that someone communicates, and depending on what that person's intentions are, the reason that they're saying what they're saying, it can change the meaning. It can change the approach. It can change the whole feel, the whole vibe, which is why this stuff is hard to really pinpoint. It's really hard to pinpoint sometimes, because you can have a friend tell you that, oh, when he or she does this, it makes me feel awful. And you might say to your friend, what? That doesn't sound so bad. Yet that friend has to deal with it over and over and over again. And you probably know what I mean. If you're the victim of emotional abuse, you have probably told your friends or your family that something is happening in the relationship, and your friend or family member will say, that doesn't sound so bad. What? He said that? Well, anyone would say that. And that's when you really feel lost and hopeless, because no one understands what you're going through. And if you've listened to this show many times, you've probably heard me talk about the pattern of emotional abuse as opposed to the one-offs. Your friends and family typically won't see the patterns of the abusive behavior. They'll only hear what you say happened in that particular moment or time. And they'll think, well, that's not so bad. Anyone would get mad at that, or anyone might say something like that. And that's when it's really challenging to explain emotionally abusive behavior, because you have trouble explaining the pattern. And of course, a lot of the times, the emotionally abusive person is charming and kind and generous outside the relationship. But inside the relationship, they're controlling and hurtful. And we just have to be cognizant of that other people outside the relationship won't always see that behavior. The observant ones will. The people that have gone through it themselves will. But if you're in a situation where you're trying to share something with your friends or family that someone in your life is doing, and they just don't get it, I wouldn't spend too much time trying to explain it, because they probably won't get it. I mean, that doesn't mean you shouldn't. I think, yes, you should probably say, look, he does this over and over again. And maybe even give them an example. Like, let's just say that you were me and I was my husband or something. And I did this to you on day 1. And then on day 2, I said the same thing. And then on day 3, I said the same thing. You might have to run them through that scenario so that they understand the pattern, because eventually it's going to get through. So again, this is if you want to share it with people, if you are sharing it with other people. But if not, keep listening to the show. Keep looking for other resources. Or like this person who wrote to me, make sure you avoid shows that don't work for you. Don't listen to shows that aren't working for you. Don't listen to shows that you think might be dangerous to you. That's what this guy wrote to me. And I want you to make up your own mind. I want you to follow your own path. And especially I want you to focus on what's most important in your life. If you are the victim of emotional abuse, and it won't stop, even if you've had the conversation, even if you're telling the abuser to stop and you feel bad every time they hurt you and you just want them to stop, but they don't stop, then you might need to focus on what you need to do for yourself. You might need to take the next step for you. I encourage communication first, but if that doesn't work, then you might have to make harder decisions. You might have to make bigger decisions. And if you are the person doing the bad behavior, you are being abusive, I've got one piece of advice for you. I'm going to tell you what to do. Whenever you're about to do or say something to the people that you love in your life, I want you to ask yourself a question. The question is, am I doing or saying this because I want to control them or change them in any way? That's the question. I mean, I still have to ask this of myself. I make sure that I never go down that road again by asking myself the question every now and then when it comes up, am I about to do or say something to my girlfriend that is an effort to control or change her in any way? I especially ask this whenever I feel emotionally triggered, whenever I get angry, or whenever I get perturbed by something she does or says. Before I respond, I will ask myself, is what I'm about to say or do an effort to change or control her? Because if it is, I have to back off. I have to go inward. I have to ask myself, well, what do I want? Because I know I can't control her, and if I did, it would drive her away. So what do I want for myself? What's important to me? If it really bothers me that much, I can certainly say, hey, look, when you did that, it bothered me. Can we talk about it? I think that's a fair question for anyone. When you did that, it bothered me. Can we talk about it? And hopefully her answer would be like, oh, of course, what happened? Or she might be angry. No, but it's still a fair question. And hopefully, and we've always been able to talk about everything, which is, I think, important. But asking yourself that question, is what I'm about to do or say an effort to control or change that person? And when you say no, then you are coming from a place deeper inside you about you, instead of wanting to shape or mold someone else into the person you want them to be. And I tell you what, when you allow someone to be who they are, they want to be with you. In a healthy relationship, when this happens, when you allow someone to be exactly who they are, the autonomous, independent person they love being with their own hobbies and their own likes and dislikes, when you allow someone to do that without giving them any grief, without judging them for it, they're going to want to be around you more and more, because people love people who let them be themselves. So I'm going to end that there. I want to thank this person for writing. I hope you don't stay mad at me. I hope you don't stay upset with me. And if you really can't stand me, then definitely don't listen to me anymore. And I'm sorry for anything I offended you with. And for everyone listening, I appreciate you. I am grateful for you. And I am so glad you tuned in. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships, containing a 200-point checklist to help you not only pinpoint the exact behaviors causing the difficulties in your relationship, but also clearly reveal to you why you leave so many interactions feeling bad. The workbook will help you make the next best relationship decisions for both of you. Use it to understand your own behaviors and how they affect those you love. Or use it together to reveal issues that you both need to work on. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. Thanks for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.